Do you want to become a better climber, improve your finger strength, power and endurance, learn effective training programming? Strength climbing is the channel for you. Scientifically proven training methods, performance analysis and coaching, practical tips, injury prevention and management. No shortcuts, just steady progress. Get strong, send quick. Stay tuned and subscribe. Hello, welcome to the Strength Climbing Hangboarding Manual. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about hang time intensity curves for hangboarding and how we can effectively use them to design hangboarding programs. An ET curve shows the relationship between the intensity of an isometric contraction and the maximum time for which this contraction can be held. An isometric contraction means that the muscle length is constant. It's neither shortening nor lengthening. If the muscle is shortening, like if you are lifting a dumbbell, the contraction would be called concentric. In contrast, if you are lowering a load, the muscle contraction would be called eccentric. The muscle lengthens while it's being loaded. Since fingerboarding is an isometric muscle activity, it's clear that the ET curves will be very helpful for calculating the hang times. In the plot here, several curves describe different approaches to endurance time modeling. On the horizontal axis, the intensity of the hold is expressed in percent of the maximum voluntary contraction, MVC, while on the vertical axis, a hold time is shown. In 1960, Walter Rohmert published the first ET curve, and hence it's referred to as the Rohmert's curve, the gray plot. Since then, numerous attempts have been made to reproduce and update the classic Rohmert's curve, and you can see them also plotted in the graph. These models differ in detail, but they all share some common characteristics. You can see that in all the models, the hold time is practically infinite for low loads, and the maximum hold time decreases as the load increases, becoming very short as we approach our standardized MVC. By standardize, I mean that we must define the hold time corresponding to our 100% effort. Hence, 100% could mean a load that we can hold for 1 second only, but it could also mean a load that we can hold for 2 or 10 seconds. For hangboarding, it's very convenient to define the 100% load as the load that can be held for 7 seconds. In fact, I have normalized the models you see in the plot so that 7 seconds corresponds to maximum effort, and in a moment I will explain why. It's essential to keep in mind that different joints fatigue at different rates. For example, the ankle joint has the highest endurance. Conversely, the shoulder is the quickest joint to fatigue, much quicker than the grip. This is something to keep in mind when we're hangboarding. If your elbows are starting to chicken wing, but you can still hold on with your fingers, it's a sign that it's best to stop the hang and not risk injury. Let's focus for a moment on the original Rohmert's model. The respective equation is T equals minus A plus B over I minus C over I squared plus D over I cube, where T is the time in seconds and A, B, C, D are the coefficients. I is the hang intensity in percent. The graph here shows the Rohmert's curve plotted for 3 different climbers. Climber D is a 6B plus 511A climber with no prior hangboard experience. Climber G is a 7C 512D veteran with limited hangboard experience. And climber J is a 7B/512 climber with expert hangboarding skills but limited climbing experience. For all 3 climbers, the curve shape is very similar, especially for the 40% to 100% intensity range, which is close to linear. Below 40%, the curves become exponential and diverge. These curve differences are described by the A, B, C, and D coefficients. The coefficients for each set of measurements can be found numerically in Excel. Looking closer at the high intensity range, you'll see that regular hangboarding and rock climbing impact the curve's steepness. A less experienced climber typically hangs at any intensity for a shorter time than an experienced hangboarder or a better climber. However, notice that although the experienced hangboarder can hold the 90% load for 19 seconds, the better rock climber can hold it for only 16 seconds. So regular rock climbing improves hangboarding, and regular hangboarding does not necessarily impact climbing all that much. It's important that we do not need to focus on low intensities to design most hangboard training programs. Even if we want to create an endurance repeaters program at 50% intensity, we don't need to hang for 100 seconds to determine the load. Instead, we want to measure our 100% MVC7 and recalculate it to 50%. For the 80 to 100% intensity range, simple polynomial, exponential, or even linear approximations work well and give R-square values close to 1. We can construct a simple table that'll help us calculate training loads on the fly. To do it, you only need to remember that 5 seconds corresponds to 104% intensity. 7 seconds corresponds to 100% intensity. 10 seconds corresponds to 96% intensity. 12 seconds corresponds to 94% intensity. 15 seconds is 90% intensity. 20 seconds is 85% intensity, and 30 seconds is 80% intensity. Now let's take a look at some example measurements to show the principle in action. In the table, we see examples of real measurements of 6 climbers of the 511 to 513 level performed on a standardized 20 mm edge in the half crimp position. Climber 1 weighs 67 kilograms and added 30 kilograms to the harness. The climber failed the hang test at 16 seconds. The total hang load was 97 kilograms, and 16 seconds corresponds to about 90% of MVC7. So we can easily calculate that the MVC7 is almost 108 kilograms, approximately 161% of the climber's total body weight. That's surely good enough for 513, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the climber can climb 513. We know nothing about the climber's endurance, technique, or finger strength in positions other than the half crimp. The same measurement was performed for climber 2. This time the hang lasted only 5 seconds, which means that the load was too heavy, around 104% of the 7 seconds max. We can again perform a similar calculation. If the total hang load, body weight plus added weight, was 80 kilograms, then the MVC7 is 80 kilograms divided by 104%, so that's 76.9 kilograms. That's 139% body weight, which is a value typical for female climbers with well-developed aerobic endurance. In the same manner, you can now perform the calculations for the remaining climbers. You can also verify these calculations by using one of the MVC7 calculators available at strengthclimbing.com. For example, with the calculator for climber 1 with intermediate settings, we can get the same exact result. So the MVC7 is 107.72 kilograms. There are also beginner and expert settings, which take into account the effects of regular hangboarding. Expert hangboarders will have a steeper curve, as I've demonstrated in the previous slides. Being able to determine the maximum 7-second load precisely makes it easy to design hangboard programs, such as the 7-free repeaters, effectively. For example, setting the load to 80 to 90% MVC7 will let you target anaerobic alactic endurance and muscle recruitment. Working in the 50 to 80% MVC7 range will develop anaerobic lactic endurance and promote tissue growth. Exercising in the low intensity range of 30 to 50% impacts aerobic endurance. This is known as endurance repeaters, and for best results you can determine your critical force with the dedicated tests and one of the calculators available at strengthclimbing.com. The similar goes for Steve Bechtel's 369 ladders protocol. We can easily calculate our hang loads to make sure that we stay within the 90 to 94% training intensity, which is crucial for eliciting neural adaptations. Knowing your endurance curve is especially useful for Eva Lopez MaxHangs. In her original articles, Eva Lopez expressed the hang intensity in terms of a 1 to 5 second time margin. When it comes to intensity, she recommended hanging between 5 seconds with a 1 second margin, which is very intense, and 15 seconds with a 5 second margin, and that can be considered light. Using our theory, we can calculate that the intensity will range between 75% and 103% of MVC7. Now let's use the model that we have discussed just before to solve some case studies related to Eva Lopez MaxHangs. So in our first example, a climber weighs 70 kilograms and adds a 30 kilogram load to the harness. The test hang is 13 seconds. And now we want to design a 10-second MaxHangs protocol at 90% intensity. 90% relative to the 10-second max. So here's the solution. Since 13 seconds is equal to about 92% of MVC7, we can calculate that MVC7 is 70 plus 30 divided by 0.92, so the MVC7 is 108.6 kilograms. Now MVC10 is 96% of MVC7, so that's 0.96 times 108.6 kilograms, and that's 104.3 kilograms. That's our MVC10, okay? That's the maximum load with which we can hang for 10 seconds. And now we want to make it a 90% intensity hang in relationship to the MVC10. So that's 0.9 times 104.3, so the result is 93.9 kilograms. Let's now calculate what is our time margin on this hang. So again, 0.9 times MVC10 divided by MVC7 is 93.9 kilograms divided by 108.6 kilograms. So it's 86% of MVC7, and this corresponds to a 19-second hang. So we get a 9-second margin on our 10-second hangs. So each time we hang for 10 seconds, we still have a 9-second safety margin. Let's perform the same calculation using the dedicated MaxHangs Excel spreadsheet. So we have the climber from our example. The climber weighs 70 kilograms, adds 30 kilograms to the harness, and the test hang time is 13 seconds. Now, we want to design a protocol where we hang for 10 seconds at 90% intensity. So the result is 93.6 kilograms, and that gives us a 9-second margin. So if we go back to our presentation, we see that the result was 93.9 kilograms, so that's 0.3 kilograms difference because I'm using a different model, slightly different model in the Excel spreadsheet. And that corresponds to a 9-second margin, so that's correct. So now let's perform the same calculation with the Hangboard Training Calculator available at strengthclimbing.com. So we input the climber's body weight, 70 kilograms. We set the calculation model to intermediate and the added hang load for the test is 30 kilograms, the edge depth is 20 millimeters, and the test hang failure time is 13 seconds. We do not add any load and we set the target hang time to 10 seconds. We can already see that the MVC7 calculated is 107.7 kilograms. So that's almost the same as we calculated manually and with the Excel spreadsheet. The time margin is very large because we are not adding any load. So theoretically the climber could hang for 63 seconds at body weight. And that hang would be suitable for repeaters or Eva Lopez in-hangs. In-hangs means intermittent hangs, and that's a name coined by Eva Lopez for repeaters. So now if we add 24 kilograms, you can see that the time margin is 10 seconds and the hang difficulty is still light, but that would already be suitable for a light version of the Eva Lopez MaxHangs. Let's now move to the second example. So we have a climber who weighs 65 kilograms and added 27 kilograms load to the harness. And the result of the test hang was 9 seconds. And we want to design a 10-second MaxHangs protocol with a 3-second margin. So here's the solution. The total hang load is 65 plus 27 kilograms, so that's 92 kilograms. 9 seconds is about 97% MVC7, so the MVC7 is 92 kilograms divided by 0.97, and that equals to 94.8 kilograms. That's our MVC7. That's the maximum 7 seconds hang load. And now we need to establish the 13-second load. So that's 10 seconds hang plus 3 seconds margin. A 13-second hang is about 92% of MVC7, hence the load is 0.92 times 94.8 kilograms, so that's 87.2 kilograms. Now, what is our hang intensity? So remember, we will be hanging for 10 seconds, and 0.96 times MVC7, that's 0.96 times 94.8 kilograms, that's 91 kilograms, so that's our MVC10, the maximum load with which we can hang for 10 seconds. And the calculated hang load for the exercise was 87.2 kilograms. So if we divide 87.2 by 91 kilograms, we get 96%. So that's already a pretty high intensity. And now let's confirm this with the Excel spreadsheet. So we open the Excel spreadsheet. We have a climber who weighs 65 kilograms, adds 27 kilograms to the harness. And the result of the test hang is 9 seconds. And now we want to hang for 10 seconds and have a time margin of 3 seconds. So currently we have 9 seconds. So let's change the intensity. If we change it to 94%, the time margin is 5 seconds. We want 3 seconds. So let's change to 96%. We have 3 seconds. The added load is 22 kilograms. And the calculated MVC7 is 94.2 kilograms. And now finally, let's repeat the calculation with the Hangboard Training Calculator. So we input 65 kilograms body weight. The total added test hang load is 27 kilograms. The edge depth remains at 20 millimeters. The time to failure was 9 seconds. We want to design 10-second hangs. So we can see that the standardized MVC7 on the 20 millimeter edge is 94.5 kilograms. So here we had 94.8. The result is practically the same. If we change the model to beginner, you will see that the result increased to 95.19 kilograms. If we change to expert, the result will be 94.22 kilograms. But let's go back to intermediate. And we want to have a 3 seconds time margin. Currently we see that it's 44 seconds, so we need to add some load. Let's add 25 kilograms. Okay, and now the time margin decreased to 1, so that would be an extreme hang difficulty. That would still be possible for Eva Lopez max hangs, but that would be quite a difficult hang. So let's reduce the load a little bit. Let's go for 23.5. So still we have 2 seconds, that's still too much. Let's go to 22. 4 seconds, that's too little. 22.5 should be perfect. No, that's still too much. 23. 3 seconds, okay? So we have the target hang time 10 seconds, the time until failure is 13 seconds, the time margin is 3 seconds, and the hang difficulty is hard. So that's how you can use the Hangboard Training Calculator to calculate the hangboard loads for the Eva Lopez MaxHangs protocol. So thank you very much for listening to this presentation, and I hope this little lecture will help you in designing your own training cycles for rock climbing.